Hello, hello. Welcome to the play that changed my life. It's another action-packed, theater-filled weekend in the Capital Region, and I'm so excited with my two guests here today. We've been chatting theater, and we can't wait to start this podcast and get it off. Miriam Weisfeld, the producing artistic director of Adirondack Theater Festival and newly appointed managing artistic director?
Producing artistic director. Same title.
Producing artistic director of Capital Repertory Theatre, The Rep. We've been trying for weeks to get you on this podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. So glad it worked out. Our schedules are just monsters these days.
Yes. We scheduled way in advance and we finally sneaked it in. I'm so happy. And also with us today is Brandon Reisner, a rising junior at Glens Falls High School, winner of the Spirit of Theater Awards at this year's High School Musical Theater Awards. Brandon, how are you?
I'm great. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah.
Glad to be back at Proctors.
Excellent. Glad to have you here. There's so much excitement going on. We got through High School Musical Theater Awards where Brandon played Hermes. In Hadestown. Yeah. And Miriam is about to start a big summer at Adirondack Theater Festival. And that kicks off. We'll get to all the details on that. But we were just chatting away about the Tony Awards and everything Tony Awards. Adirondack Theater Festival is having a viewing party. But we're just gossiping about what your choices are. And we're talking about a lot of musicals. And Brandon, your choice, you thought Best Actress in a Musical?
I'm rooting for Audra.
I
am rooting for Audra.
I think this... I have conspiracy theories. Patti LuPone came out with some shade about, the interviewer asked her about what she thought about Audra's Mama Rose and Gypsy. And Patti LuPone was silent, looked out the window and said, "Such a nice day." And Ms. LuPone is a Tony Award voter, and she is... very protective of her portrayal of Mama Rose. But enough of that. What are your Tony favorites? Do you have any?
You know, I'm not going to make any calls for this year, but I'm going to encourage everybody to watch the Tonys with us at Adirondack Theater Festival's viewing party. So if you don't already have plans on June 8th, join us at Downtown Social in Glens Falls at 7 p.m. It's just $10 at the door, and you have a chance to bid on some amazing raffle items. We are... lucky enough to have a number of opening night gifts and signed posters from this year's Tony-nominated shows and several others. So there's some really delicious goodies that you could get your hands on.
I'm there. I'm headed right up the Northway after Pride. Pride is Sunday the 8th. Mm-hmm. If you want to come hang out in Washington Park, find a Harbinger tent, and you can march with us at 11:30 a.m. We'll be lined up. Just come on by, and you can hand out postcards to At the Wedding, which is coming up at Sand Lake Center for the Arts. My partner, Chris Foster, is directing. It's a brilliant comedy by Brenna Turner, and it's at Sand Lake Center for the Arts from the 6th through the 15th. So it has a performance on Pride Day. It also has performances through the Capital Region Festival of Theater, but you need to go see it. So Tony Awards, you don't have a particular choice. I loved Purpose, Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, Pulitzer Prize winner. My favorite play of the year, though, I think In New York City. I mean, who has a favorite play when, you experience plays all over the place. I've been to, the Capital Region. Mm-hmm. I've probably seen 100 plays. But New York City, Liberation by Bess Wool was a great, great play. It was sort of about her mother and women's consciousness-raising groups in the 70s. And I just loved the way that it moved and shifted scenes, and
she's a pretty fascinating writer. Yeah, this is why I can't pick a favorite, right? There's so many astonishing writers who have kind of moved from the downtown, really kind of experimental scene into the mainstream and into Broadway. Brandon is a great example. Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, of course, wrote Appropriate, which was recognized last year, won the Pulitzer Prize this year for Purpose, which is also up for a Tony Award. I was fortunate enough, actually, to help support the world premiere of Appropriate several years ago in a theater called Woolly Mammoth in Washington, D.C. Bess is another great example. She did a lot of work with a company called The Civilians, which also commissioned Mr. Burns, which you and I saw the other night at Union College. So I love, more than anything, I love seeing these writers who came up in these really risky, innovative, kind of downtown experimental theater scenes, breaking into the mainstream and being recognized by a much wider audience. That's really gratifying.
Yeah, I'm pushing the story forward.
Yeah.
Brandon Jacobs Jenkins, a particular favorite of mine. I did the Capital Region premieres of Appropriate and Gloria at Albany Civic Theater. Beswell, amazing playwright. She has this play called Make Believe, where the first 45 minutes of it are played out by 4 children, 12 years old and under, and scene changes and, whole scenes, and you're just astonished that this is happening. It's really like breathtaking, and then it shifts to their older selves in their childhood home. And, it's just so powerful.
Yeah, that's such a great example of the kind of innovation that's possible at the smaller not-for-profit theaters that then go on to seed the really innovative work that ends up being successful commercially, right? We've got to be taking risks and experimenting on a smaller scale in order to sort of get these new ideas refined to a point where they're really going to hit someplace like Broadway.
Yeah. Talk about Woolly Mammoth. This is sort of a legendary theater company to me. I've never been, but so many great works have come out of there and their founder. Tell us more about it.
Sure. So I sort of cut my teeth professionally at Woolly Mammoth Theater, and Woolly is a theater at the edge of the National Mall, right? So it sort of sits at the center of political power in our country. And I was very interested, when I came out of graduate school, I was very interested in this notion of making new work in our political capital. We had opportunities to do things like post-show discussions about shows about Supreme Court cases that Supreme Court justices would come and participate in. It was really an astonishing audience that we were able to draw for these plays. And I think that's one of the reasons that so many hot young playwrights sort of wanted to debut their work at this theater. And so this was where we helped to develop Eclipsed, which Black Theater Troupe of Upstate New York just opened this weekend.
Yep.
And Mr. Burns, which we just talked about, which was just at Union College, Appropriate by Brandon Jacobs Jenkins. So many works that went on to have really high profile productions in New York and around the country.
I like that. I love that idea of doing these pieces of art in political centers. Capital Region Festival of Theater is hosting a mayoral candidates forum. The 4 Democratic candidates for Albany mayor are going to have a forum sponsored by the Capital Region Festival of Theater at the Madison Theater, which is owned by Councilman Owusu Anani, and it's going to be moderated by Owen Smith, the Playhouse Stage artistic director. And Owen's talking me down because I'm so excited to hear politicians talk about the arts and about the power and about what Albany has and can be. As an artistic community, the whole point of the Capital Region Festival of Theater is that we have 100 theaters. We have a dynamic, cultural economic force in the region. So I want to hear what their commitments are. That really gets me excited.
Patrick, I love that. I love the notion of inviting the political conversation and the political power players into the theater, because that's where Western theater comes from, right? When we think about the creation of theater.
That's community theater.
Well, Western theater, right? Theater happens all over the globe, but Western theater, as we define it, as Aristotle defined it, came about in ancient Greece, right? In 5th century BC Athens, as a tool to help teach people about democracy.
Yeah.
Did you learn about this in school?
I did.
I love that. Tell us what you learned.
I'm in a class called Intro to Theater Arts, and I went into it thinking I was just going to dance and sing and learn about musicals. But
Nothing wrong
with that. But my teacher, Bessie Steinbach-Fuller, did such a great job of showing that theater is so much more than entertainment, and that it matters so much in our world, especially now, in this moment. Theater matters to get certain points across. It was used to show how to abide by laws that were put up, and it was mandatory to go. You had to go to these shows. They had like a roster, and they would mark your name down if you were there. And I just think it's great that we're still using theater today to
I want to bring back the roster.
Yes, I agree.
That is phenomenal, Brandon, that you actually were learning about ancient Greek theater in high school.
Yeah.
That's astonishing. And this is why I am so excited to take the helm at Capital Rep as well, because there's something very, very motivating about making theater in New York's capital. This is a center of a lot of really important cultural conversations, right? Yeah. We have a gift, to have this platform in this region. And I find it so exciting when our colleagues recognize that.
Yeah. I had a friend at one time call me, I was talking about Albany Civic Theater or wherever I was working. They were like, "You're so provincial." I was like, no, I'm in the capital. This isn't the provinces. We are in the seat of power. Matilda Cuomo used to come to Albany Civic Theater. But Brandon, you had mentioned something at this time in theater, in this time being relevant. What does theater have to do with this time, or what do you see as theater's role in speaking to this time?
I think as time has gone on, a lot of people have forgotten that everybody is human and that everyone has their own voice. It doesn't matter where you come from, your ethnicity, religion, nothing matters. But everyone has a voice, should have a reason to be here. And I think theater is such a great way of showing that it doesn't matter where you come from, that if there's a place where you feel as though you belong and that's where you should be, then you go there and you make it work and you make a life there. And I think a lot of people come here for theater because they feel that that's what they should do. And I think that is just a great thing. If there's something you feel as though you should do, go do it. And I think there's so many stories, plays, musicals that show that. And I think that's a great thing to have right now. It's like people my age. A lot of people have lost just how to care for a lot of people, just other people in general. Yeah. And the community of theater is such a... You can meet someone that day and then talk about a show you've been in, and then you have a new best friend. Yeah. And it's just getting connections and meeting people and remembering that everybody's human. And
I had asked you earlier why, what was required of the Spirit of Theater Award, and that's awesome.
Sounds like you have it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So let's go on to our immediate plans. What are you doing this weekend? No. What do we got coming up? You have the Tony watching party, and that falls, or your season falls hard on the heels of it. When do you start your season?
Yeah, so Adirondack Theater Festival's first performance this year is June 27th. We're opening the season with a concert presentation of a brand new musical thriller called The Village of Vale. And this is a really, talk about innovative pieces. This is a really innovative new musical that you can hear performed for, I think, the first time. This is the first time that the public is going to hear this version of the story. It's in development for a commercial production eventually. And one of the things that we're most excited about is that the lead in The Village of Vale will be performed by Giselle Jimenez, who played Nessa Rose in Wicked on Broadway. She was in the film of Tick, Tick, Boom. Yeah, there's some pretty extraordinary talent, that's already attached to this show. And it's got a little bit of a local connection as well. We're producing this in partnership with a Tony-winning producer named Jane Dubin, who worked on Peter and the Starcatcher and An American in Paris. She's actually got a family home on Lake George. So she's been a part of the local community for many, many years. She's a regular patron at ATF, and she came to me a couple seasons ago and said, I'd really like to figure out how to do something together. And the concert presentation model that we have developed at ATF has had an incredible impact already. We've just been doing this the last few seasons, but kind of like Woolly Mammoth, Adirondack Theatre Festival is dedicated to the development and production of new work, right? So new plays and new musicals. And so we have been providing one slot in our season every year for a new musical in development. That means the writers come to Glens Falls, they work on a new draft, and then they hear that draft for the very first time in front of an audience. So the audience is part of the development of this, right? The audience is sort of teaching them how this new draft operates. Some shows that have come through this format have already gone on to huge success. In fact, the first one that we did in this format a few years ago, a new musical called Mystic Pizza, is going on to a tour and will be produced at Capital Rep at the end of this season.
I had heard on one of the podcasts that they were in a recording session.
Yes, they just recorded a concept album as well, so that will be out soon. It's Excellent. An amazing jukebox score of mega hits from the 80s and 90s, and of course it's based on the movie starring Julia Roberts. Yeah. It's just irresistible. Yeah. And that started, it had some really important development at Adirondack Theatre Festival here in Glens Falls.
Great. Yeah. And you did one about Henry VIII?
That's right. Last year we did a new musical called The King's Wife.
Oh, The King's Wife.
Yeah. It was about Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn, and starred one of the ladies who played one of the queens in Six. I mean, there's some really amazing talent that get excited by this new work in development and come up to spend the summer with us to take that next step.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah.
And what a great gig, if you're living wherever down in the city and come up to Glens Falls. That must be sweet.
It's a great spot to spend a few weeks in the summer. It really is.
Yeah, really revivifying. I saw Six last weekend at Saratoga Children's Theatre.
Yes.
Teenagers.
Wow.
Yeah. And frankly, it never made more sense to me.
I bet they had a lot of fun with it.
They had a blast.
I bet it was a thrill.
They had a blast. Yeah. And someone was saying it's dark, and I'm like, well, Six isn't really dark at all.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yes. We have more to talk about with the ATF season because there's more than just the Village of Vale. Mm-hmm. But Brandon is doing Mary Poppins, which is a very, you can see why that's a children's show. Although I don't get Mary Poppins. Can we talk? It's about this benevolent, strict nanny. And the children love her because she's magical.
Because she's magical.
Well, she's also sort of a super nanny figure, right? I mean, isn't that what's so great about that show is that this, in real life, this British woman comes to like chaotic American households and imposes discipline, right? Yep. And that's the magic.
Yeah, and the kids love it.
Yeah, yep. It works.
I think it's because Mary gave them a different perspective. In the show, their parents don't give them a lot of time of day. Their dad's a workaholic. Their mom isn't around as much.
Yeah, well,
all the nannies, they were like...
A little of that.
Yeah. And
anyone can see why that
and they went crazy with the nannies, but Mary brings more of a creative side to it and introduces them to Bert, who's just so fun. And I think that's why they enjoy her. Yeah. Because she shows a different side of life in that.
I really just have a Disney block I was never in a Disney household. We watched the Sunday night program, Wonderful World, but we never went to the theme parks. We never went to the movies, and this is pre-VCR, so we didn't have the videotapes at home. But, yeah, so I have a Disney block.
Really?
Yeah.
I love Disney. I was in Beauty and the Beast last summer.
Oh!
Yeah. Yep.
Coming to Proctors.
I'm very excited to see it.
So you're in Mary Poppins, and what group is doing this?
So my high school does a summer show, and
Okay.
it's open to middle schoolers and high schoolers. So then the middle schoolers can get a feel for what the high school theater program is like, so they can get excited to be in it once they come up.
Yeah, jumping in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And who are you playing?
Auditions have not happened yet.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I'll be auditioning for Bert.
Excellent.
I love to tap, and he's got to tap.
I was going to say.
Yep.
You must be a dancer.
I love to tap.
Yeah.
Love to
We'll
tap.
keep our fingers crossed for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and you came off a run of Hadestown,
I did.
which is awesome. 3 high schools in the area did Hadestown. And someone asked me just last night, they go, it was their first time we did a read-through. I'm directing Between Riverside and Crazy at Albany Civic Theater, and I had the scripts spread around the table. And this young woman, it's the first time she's seen a dramatist play service script. She had always done musicals, or they had things printed out, but she had never held a script before.
Oh,
And
the
she
little
was
acting edition?
Yeah, and she was asking, "Can I write in this?" And I was like, "Yes."
Yep, we're used to the librettos.
Go ahead. But she asked me about rights, and I was like, "Well, that's a story." And the different ways, like in high schools now, why is it that Hadestown can have a junior version? They don't want adults to do it, and it's still running on Broadway. Chicago, you can have a junior version and an adult version, and the show's still running on Broadway. But Wicked, which has been there 20 years.
Still no rights. Yeah, Beetlejuice's Junior just came out, but there's still not one for like an older demographic.
So will that be available next season? Here I am asking Brandon.
Yeah.
Do you work for one of the licensing houses? Do you have some
goodness,
inside
I
info?
I hope so. I would love to play Beetlejuice one day. So if my director's listening, I would love to play Beetlejuice one day.
Campaigning.
Yeah. I hope so. I really do hope so.
I actually worked at Dramatist Play Service, my first job in the city. I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts on 30th and Madison. Right around the corner on Park Avenue South was Dramatist Play Service. And I used to, after school, go up there for 4 or 5 hours and pack up shipments to Glens Falls High School. Yeah, it was a great job.
Sounds great.
Yeah, you had all the plays, surrounded by plays. And there was a guy in the office, who went to go see plays to see if they'd want to publish them or not. And he would always take me around, and I'd see Len Jenkins plays and, all sorts of things at the public.
It's a big business. But, Patrick, this might want to be a whole other episode talking about the business of licensing plays, really, because it's such an interesting thing to understand how what the economic power of the markets like the educational market and the community theater market are, right? Because there are so many more of those productions than professional productions.
Yeah, I've argued that in the past because at Harbinger, we're coming up on our 15th Capital Region premiere. Between Riverside and Crazy, it'll be our 16th. And we apply for rights for plays, and we get denied again and again and again. There are 2 plays we've been waiting 3 years on. The Welkin by Lucy Kirkwood and Downstate by Bruce Norris. And they continue to deny us, thinking that a local professional company is going to do this play. And I'm like, okay, we'll talk to you. She said try again in 6 months. So on October 15th, I'll be trying
again. Yep.
And I'm going to leave my calendar flexible. I don't have a house to fill. I don't have real estate, so I'm just gonna, say if it happens, it happens, and we'll find out. But yes, community theaters, when they open it up, it's like Dramatist Play Service. How much money do you make from, the regional theaters, and how much do you make from the high schools and the community theaters? but still they can treat community theaters like with a stiff arm, and most of the time the community theaters, they're producing stuff that's, they're not trying to do the newest stuff, so they don't challenge them. But
I think that's a whole other conversation that we should have at some point, because it's so complicated and it's so interesting. And it really does demonstrate, the economic heft that educational programs have, that summer camps have, that these different markets, have. And that's, in my experience working in the commercial sector, that's math that the underlying rights holders are doing. You want to think ahead to how to monetize a property at each stage, right? Whether you're developing it for the first class market, which is what we call Broadway, or the second class market, you always want to think about the entire life cycle of a property, right? So we talked about the more experimental, risky work that happens in the not-for-profit theaters. So you might start a project there, and then try to move it to Broadway or a national tour. But then you're always thinking, ultimately, how is this going to do in licensing? Because those we call them amateur licenses, right? The licenses that go to community theaters and educational institutions. There are so many of them, and they're looking for specific scale, right? Like a school wants a really big musical that they can put a lot of students in, right? And so if I'm a commercial producer thinking about how do I eventually monetize this, recoup my investment, and then, turn a profit for my investors, I want to think about how something's going to operate all the way down the line, right? So it's really, really complicated.
And going back to the Tony Awards, there are many Tony voters who are looking down the line, and not just, what is best musical, but then what else is good for the entire life cycle of that property.
And the whole ecosystem. Yeah, you really got to think of it as the entire national theater community, right? The international theater community now is one ecosystem. We're all interdependent, right? The professional theaters and the new play organizations that are home to those innovations that eventually become the shows that really work for audiences, right? That's where the work starts very often. Then it moves to the commercial market. Then it moves to stock and amateur and educational. So it's sort of like a food chain, right? And then the profit that you make in licensing goes back to feed the investment in the new work.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day, as far as like Schubert grants and things like that, right?
Yeah, that's a great example. The Schubert organization owns a number of theaters on Broadway. They also have a foundation that supports not-for-profit theaters, including Capital Repertory Theatre and the Adirondack Theatre Festival. Thank you, Schubert organization. We just got our gifts this year. Because the Schuberts understand that in order to create those massive properties that then every school and every community theater wants to do, right, you've got to first invest in the innovation and the risk-taking that happens at the beginning of the life of a piece or the life of a writer. Yeah.
Awesome. What else is going on in the Adirondack Theatre Festival season?
After the Village of Vale, we are doing a full production of a musical that actually was nominated for a Tony Award a couple seasons ago called Gutenberg the Musical. Yes. This piece is just delightful, and we're really lucky that it will be directed by ATF's co-founder Martha Banta, but she's going to direct this little musical for us in Glens Falls right before she puts Mamma Mia back into Broadway.
Oh my goodness.
We're so lucky to have her back. And this show is just delicious. It's a two-hander about these two guys who want to be musical theater writers so desperately, and they have the worst idea ever for a new musical. They write a musical about Johann Gutenberg, the inventor of the printing press, and they're pitching it to Broadway producers, right? And they can't afford a cast, so they're performing the entire thing, just the two of them. It has these incredible characters like a love interest named Helvetica.
Yeah.
And an evil priest who doesn't want people to learn to read so they'll know what the Bible actually says. A cat named Satan. I mean, it's so irreverent. It's just screamingly funny. It's actually got so much heart to it as well because it's this love letter to Broadway, right, in musical theater, and also to reading. to literacy. It says some very witty things about how important it is for people to be able to talk about, relevance for our moment, right? How important it is for people to be able to access information themselves and really understand where it's coming from.
Yeah, and it's played by 2 actors. You said that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's got all that quick change and, comic hijinks.
Incredible versatility, yeah.
Yeah, Martha Banta is a blast from the past for me. I saw her at the Rep at Next Act New Play Festival when you did Last American Newspaper.
That's right.
Reading, which is also going to be part of your season. But Martha and I used to bump into each other back in the 90s in Manhattan. We ran in like concentric circles. We had friends who were friends who were friends. Yeah, and it was so funny seeing her, great to see her. She went on and helped create Rent.
That's right.
And then the original Mamma Mia.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I'll be back at the Winter Garden starting this August.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did, they asked me to write a libretto, Pro Musica, Albany Pro Musica. I did a piece for them considering Matthew Shepard, which was, I don't know how it happened, but they wanted me to be a narrator in it. And it's like, I don't sing. So then I'm plopped on the stage with one rehearsal in 60 incredible voices. It's sort of that feeling of being thrown in the middle of the ocean, but it was awesome. And then they asked me to write a libretto. They were doing a Broadway evening. And I write reviews and essays, and but and it was all it was all Broadway songs, but try and string together some sort of narrative or what it is. And Mamma Mia was the opening song, and I'm like thinking, here I go again, my heart is broken. And Mamma Mia is famously credited with bringing the spirit of Broadway back to life after 9/11 in October of 2001. And I was like, look at it being revived again. Like, yeah, we're back, in need of this, mega mix curtain call where we can all sing and dance together because, our hearts have been broken.
That's so interesting. I keep going back to what you said, Brandon, about the the way that the work that we put on stage reflects our reality. Because even there's so much work that explicitly addresses, our current moment, whether literally or metaphorically. But even those escapist pieces, right? Even though the funny girls and the sort of splashes of joy that people seem to have been flocking to the last few years, that's also a reflection, right?
Yeah.
Of where we've been as a society, what we need right now. And it's interesting. There are a couple pieces in the Rep season this coming year that sort of reflect that too. Our need for joy, but also our need to find a reason to hope, right? And that sort of battle, I think, between hope and despair that's going on inside a lot of us right now.
I think it's like some people look at it like as a dichotomy, and I don't think it is at all. I think it's the same thing, that the need to laugh, to feel joy is a coping mechanism that we need to survive, to look at what is wrong. Like, we have to be able to, feel good, to look at ourselves. Like, we can't change, while we're, in a corner in a ball.
Well, the Greeks knew this, right? You think about what you learned about the Festival of Dionysus. You would have tragedy, 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 and then the satyr play, right? And then the comedy at the end. We need that as humans, right?
We did a British farce, Ray Cooney, Run for My Wife. It was called Out of Order, and it was about a politician cheating on his wife, and it was like drop drawers and, just the silliest, looniest, hotel door slamming farce when he was first elected in 2016, and we were all like coming into rehearsal like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And my partner directed it and rallied the troops, and the response from the audience was overwhelming. It was like gale force. You know, we were just like, we're just doing, you know, silly bits here. But it was just, you know.
It's what your audience needed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was just grabbed onto.
Yeah.
I love a comedy. I do.
What's your favorite comedy?
It was Mean Girls.
Okay.
I love that show. I also, before it was announced that my school was doing it last year, I had looked into Something Rotten. And I just think that show is so funny.
Yeah.
I think it's so hilarious. I think it's a great time.
Yeah.
And like you said, I just think comedy shows are necessary sometimes. I think it's fun to have fun. Yeah. So just let yourself have fun.
Well, Mean Girls, you know, that has a lot going on.
Oh, yeah.
So does Something Rotten. But
Mean Girls is probably a little not as collected as Something Rotten is. Mean Girls was a crazy show to be in. There was a lot going on. I had a wonderful time, though. It was great. I love that show.
What was it? What's the difference performing at Schenectady Light Opera Company as opposed to your high school?
New people.
Sure.
New people, definitely. And then it was, I don't want to say more competitive at SLOC, but cuts were obviously happening. And we don't do cuts at our school. Everyone gets in. So the audition process was a lot more scary than what I'm used to. Yeah, it's different. It's hard to explain why it was different, but it was so different. And the fact that like you said, it was like kind of being thrown in the middle of the ocean. I had auditioned with a few of my friends and I was like, okay, we can carpool. I'll have some people with me. And then I made it through and that was that. And I had to learn how to adapt to that new space, new rehearsal space, new way of learning music from a different music director, new people. And I'm so thankful for that. It was so helpful because I was so used to just the comfort of my stage at my school. But it was so great to get out there and have a different experience and know how other directors do things. And I just think the versatility is really helpful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Going into 11th grade. Unbelievable. When I was your age, I had just discovered theater by reading Glass Menagerie in an English class, and I had never performed. And I auditioned for Carnival. They did one musical a year at my high school, and I didn't know what an audition was. And they said you had to come in with a song, so I learned Jackson Brown's Doctor My Eyes and sang it a cappella. And I got the only non-singing part in the musical, and I got to play with a funny dialect and Dr. Wilhelm Glass. And at a certain point, it was like I was really into Monty Python. And at a certain point in rehearsals, I was just coming up with new stuff every day. And the director called me out into center stage and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is an actor." And I was like, I was doomed for life. That was it. That was it.
Doomed for life.
Yeah, sorry for taking up so much of your time. But anyway, Last American Newspaper. This is about a Glens Falls.
True story. Yes. The newspaper in Glens Falls called the Post-Star won a Pulitzer Prize back in 2009 for editorial writing, and since then has experienced the kind of pressures on local journalism that I think a lot of media outlets have been experiencing in terms of technology changing and the business model changing and political pressures that were not being exerted before on our First Amendment rights. And so I became very interested in the memoir that the former editor of the Post-Star, Ken Tingley, wrote about his experience there. He approached Adirondack Theatre Festival and asked if we would be interested in trying to adapt it for the stage. And so we commissioned Ken to create an adaptation of his memoir. And it's pretty astonishing, the momentum around this play already. So it's a commission, which means as part of our Stories Start Here campaign, we have been raising money to create and develop the play. Eventually, we'd like to produce it in a future season. We have done the first reading so far, which was part of the Next Act Festival at Capital Repertory Theatre. It was pretty amazing, the response to that reading. And so we're presenting a weekend of staged readings of the next draft, as part of the Adirondack Theatre Festival this summer.
And I found it fascinating, it works on so many levels. It works, on an emotional level about what these people are going through, and on a civic level about what the newspaper provides the community and why it's important, and, what it provides, and on a spiritual level, as far as what are we doing with our lives, and what are the purposes that we are meant to fulfill. I thought the opinions writer, it was just like he was drafted into this position and ended up winning a Pulitzer Prize for it.
Yeah. That's a real reporter, Mark Mahoney, who won the 2009 Pulitzer for editorial writing. All of the characters in The Last American Newspaper are either composites or dramatizations of real journalists who've been working in our community, telling these incredible stories about domestic violence, the opioid epidemic, growing up gay in the North Country. These were investigative pieces that, for economic reasons, the newspapers were sort of hesitant to touch. And what's so, I think, moving and fascinating about peeking inside the workings of this newsroom are that you hear these debates among the reporters and the editors and the publishers about which advertisers are we going to lose if we do this story? Which politician are we going to alienate if we do this story? And how do we weigh that against our responsibility to the public?
Yeah, and it's odd that we have this sort of cafeteria outlook where we can choose to support or not support and pick and choose, because I think like a newspaper used to be an institution where, I don't know what, but that was just a trusted source, and there were newspapers that had conservative or leftist leanings, but it was always, it wasn't something that, was like either, a Bible or trash, that there was more of an acceptance.
Yeah, and I think there was more of a foundation of trust in those mainstream sources of journalism, which allowed us to kind of come together, to your point, Brandon, whatever background you're from, whatever life experience you're from, if we can all come together around a shared set of facts, right, a shared story about what our reality is, then we're able to communicate about problems that we have as a society and how to solve them, right? If we can't agree on a basic set of facts, a basic set of reality as reflected in, the mainstream media, then it becomes very, very difficult to solve any problems together because we're all operating in different realities.
Yeah. Where do you get your news from, Brandon?
My news?
Yes.
I asked my director a lot of questions. She's very knowledgeable.
Okay.
And then, of course, just because of the age, love TikTok. Can't believe everything you get off TikTok. Of course.
Now, when you say you love TikTok, are you watching like videos? Are there speeches or there stories? Because usually it's like very brief, right?
So It's so different now where there's like 30-minute videos on TikTok.
I had no idea.
Yeah, you can make your videos very long now. I enjoy hearing everybody's perspective on certain pieces of news. Because then you can rack their brains on it and see why they think that if you disagree, and then maybe change your point of view on something. So that's why I enjoy.
You know, what I love about what you're saying too is that it all comes back to theater, right? It all comes back to dialogue, because that's what you're describing, right? When we talk about, and we've had these great conversations, Ken and our director, Marcus Kidd, and I have had these great conversations as we work on The Last American Newspaper about what propaganda is versus journalism, right? Versus reportage. And that's something that theater is very, very good at helping us with as well, right? Because propaganda means that you're only getting one point of view, and there's only one way to interpret it, right? And it's a monologic way of delivering information. Theater, on the other hand, is a dialogic way of delivering information, right? When we as the audience are watching two different characters up there on stage in conflict, we've got a job to do as an audience. We've got an interpretive job to do to analyze which one we think is right? You are empowered as an audience member to think critically about multiple perspectives that you're witnessing on stage. And that is why democracy and theater grew up hand in hand.
Yeah. You're also allowed to be your own director as far as where you focus your attention and where, how you interpret this.
Unlike film. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's an experience that you can only get in the theater, not on a screen.
Yeah. Awesome. And what else is in Adirondack Theater Festival season?
So The Last American Newspaper will be presented in a staged reading from June 25th to 27th. And then we close the season with this really joyful story about belonging. It's called Queen's Girl, Black in the Green Mountains. And it's based on the true story of a teenager in Nigeria in the 1960s who sees a brochure for Bennington College and decides this is the ultimate college experience, and finds herself one of 12 black women at Bennington College in the late 60s, early 70s, surrounded by so much more snow than she ever imagined possible, and participating in the counterculture, hitchhiking to go see Sly and the Family Stone, and dancing to James Brown, and ultimately really finding herself in a world that initially seemed so alien. And she does that by finding her place in the theater department, which is really cool.
I want to see that.
Yeah,
Me too.
it's
I'm
great.
so excited.
It's very cool. We've actually got some post-show discussions planned with folks from Bennington College, with folks from Skidmore. Yeah, it's become a really interesting platform for community conversation about belonging.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to see that.
Me too. I'm excited for Gutenberg. Do love the music.
Excellent. So we'll see each other all summer long.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess we've come to the time in the podcast when we talk about the play that changed my life. And it's not my life. It's your life.
Oh, Brandon, you've got to go first. This is a really hard question.
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
I can't wait to hear your answer.
Okay. Do musicals count?
Of course. Of course.
Yeah. Hadestown, the most recent one that I did. There's so many reasons on why I'm such a different person from it. Musical theater, a lot of people look at it as like you have to be a good singer, and that's how you make your way through a musical theater.
Who would ever say that?
Oh goodness, I know. But I think Hadestown is such a beautiful story because there's so many different ways that each character could be portrayed. And that's really what our director wanted to see from us, is she really racked our brains and she really had us dive deep into who our characters were. And I was able to learn that you don't have to feel one emotion at one time, especially on stage. You're allowed to feel many different ways in a moment, and you don't have to explain that all the time. You're just allowed to feel. And Hadestown was such a great just demonstration of that, and that makes me so happy. And then getting nominated and winning Spirit of Theater, I met so many people and saw so much talent, and everyone was just happy to be there. And with news, like news channels, we get so much negative news all the time, and it was just nice to have a good time with nothing going wrong, and everyone was happy to be there, and everyone was excited to see everybody, and everyone was rooting for everyone else. And it was just such a great change of perspective to be excited for more things in life.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary evening, and a real credit to you, your generation, and how you are lifting Capital Region Theater, and that we're very proud of what you've become. When I tell these stories about long ago and far away, it's like look how far we've come, and we're very excited for the future because of you and your entire class. It was incredible what you guys are up to.
It was such a great time. I can speak for everybody when I say everyone had such a great time. Really, I'm miss
so
it.
Glad.
Yeah.
Great. Miriam.
I think I'll talk about a musical too, because you and I keep talking about Mr. Burns, which was just done by some fantastic students at Union College. Helping to develop that show changed a lot for me, because that was the first sort of musical that I ever helped to develop. Like you, I came from a new play background. I wasn't really, I had done musicals as a kid, but I wasn't really a musical theater person. Honestly, I was a little bit of a snob about musicals. I did serious plays, and what changed that for me was working with the late Michael Friedman on Mr. Burns. Of course, he's the composer who did Bloody Bloody Andrew Jackson, and many, many other really important pieces that came out of that sort of downtown scene. And I learned so much from working with Michael on that show, because he was one of the most incisively intelligent theater artists I've ever worked with. And the respect that he had for the craft of musical theater completely changed my understanding of what it was. And, I started my career as a dramaturg, right? Somebody who's sort of like a mechanic, getting under the hood of a new play and sort of figuring out how it operates and working with the writer and the director to make sure that it's running, as intended. And when I discovered from working with Michael Friedman that is a whole other discipline in musical theater, that is an art form that is uniquely American, that is so complex structurally, I became fascinated at the notion of trying to sort of learn how that engine is built. And shortly after that, I moved from the not-for-profit sector into Broadway, and the next musical that I worked on was the SpongeBob SquarePants musical, which is a very, very different change of pace.
Yeah, fantastic. I love that. Opening up and seeing more possibilities into theater things, and when you become a snob, it's because I don't know who I'm talking about. It's because you think you know everything, right? And when you drop the scales from your eyes, they were mixing metaphors or whatever. But when you open yourself up and say, what can I learn here? What can I discover? Is when growth happens.
Absolutely.
If I'm stuck in my ways and I know what is theater and that is just whatever nonsense, it's like then I'm left, with this limited view.
What's the point? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was thinking, I was talking to my students, and I was like, the best way to grow as an artist is to get over your own hurt feelings and see all the opportunities, because, and that's what the Capital Region Festival of Theater is about. It's not about hurt feelings, but it's about there's so much out there. And Capital Region Festival of Theater, it's going 4 nights from June 12th through June 15th, 8 different venues. We have one acts, we have stand-up, we have music, we have vocal auditions with Lisa Franklin. We have Young Scholar panel with Gabby Pizzolo, Annabelle Duffy. We have mayoral candidates forum. We have puppets. So we have improv. And we have free wine from Josh Sellers at the Mixer at the Q Theater. So you want to make
that, Brandon?
You want to make
I'll
that,
keep that
Brandon.
one in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, especially try the Prosecco.
Yeah.
I know you like the bubbly. So, check out the Capital Region Festival of Theater, crftinc.org. It's going to be massive. And at the wedding, Sand Lake Center for the Arts, June 6th through June 18th. And Mary Poppins.
I should know the dates off the top of my head, and I don't.
Just look it up.
Just look it up.
Glens Falls.
South Glens Falls.
South Glens Falls.
South Glens Falls. Yeah.
Okay. And Adirondack Theater Festival. Everyone join us for the Tony Awards viewing party
on June 8th at 7 p.m. at Downtown Social in downtown Glens Falls.
Right after Pride, where you'll want to march with Harbinger.
Going to be such a great day. Oh my God. Start the day with
Yes.
Pride and end it with the Tonys. That is one awesome Saturday.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sunday.
Sunday.
Sunday, thank you.
And the Adirondack Theater Festival.
Opening June 27th.
Awesome. Miriam, such a pleasure to have you on here. We'll have to talk theater again. You said we have another episode to talk about.
Got a whole
Lent
agenda
and-
to work through
right,
now.
and
It was such a pleasure to be here and such a pleasure to meet you, Brandon.
It was so nice to meet you. I'm so
Yeah.
glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon.
Of course, thank you for having me.
Have a great summer.
I will. I'll see you around.
All right.
Yeah.
And I'll see you in a theater, I hope. See you soon.